They're great.
There.
All right, section 2.4, point slope form. Like I mentioned, you're gonna know a point and you're gonna know the slope because that's the information we need. So point and slope. So here's our formula. It's a little bit longer because it's not just on one side, it's on both sides. So M again stands for
Slope.
the value of the slope. So that didn't change. M is still the slope, and we still need to know that. And then we don't specifically need the y-intercept. We just need any point that's on the line. And that point we're going to represent with the ordered pair here, x sub 1 and y sub 1. So just any point that's on the line. Okay? That makes sense? I was just actually looking to see if that's something you had to write down, but it's probably on your paper already, right?
It is.
Okay. And so any point on the graph of the line.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a look. Write the equation of the line through the point 3, -4 with a slope of 3/5. So let's write down our general equation, which is y minus y1, which is equal to m times x minus x1. So here's what we're going to replace. Remember how in slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, we had to replace or know the m value and the b value, right? Those were the two that we put in. In this equation, we need to know what this one is, what that one is, and what that one is. So we've got 3 things.
Not the, because the other ones are.
The x and the y will just stay as x and y.
Okay.
Okay, so when we look at this, here's our magic word, slope. That tells us this is m, right? That one's the m. And then the 3, -4. Do you remember which one comes first? X and y? X goes first, so that's x sub 1, and this is y sub 1. Okay, and then we just fill in the blanks.
Y
minus,
or so.
Yep, y minus
-4. Which is +4.
Yep, we'll switch that in just a second, but yes. And then m is 3/5. And then we have our parentheses, x minus, and then the x1 is 3. Now I'm guessing the computer program, MyOpenMath, would accept this as the answer, but we don't really like to have these 2 minuses right next to each other. Do you remember what happens here?
It becomes positive.
It turns into plus. So if I was asking you to give this answer, I would like to see y plus 4 equals, the rest of it doesn't change, but you don't want to have those 2 minuses right next to each other. Subtracting, you add the opposite, so it becomes adding a positive.
So you don't count.
No, we're not doing anything else right now. We're just writing down the equation using point slope form. As long as you know a point and you know the slope, you can write out the equation. Okay, so again, it's just filling in the correct blanks that we've got. Any questions on that one?
I like that.
You like that one better?
Easy.
All right.
No,
Now,
I don't like the slope on the graph.
well, sorry. Here's what happens. Write the equation of the line through the point, -6, 2, with a slope of -2/3, but this time we're going to put it in slope intercept form. Now, that may seem awful, but here's the deal.
It does.
We write it out in this form first because we know a point and we know the slope, right? So we're going to write it out in this form, and then we're going to take that and switch it and solve for the y and get it over here. So still solving some equations like we did last chapter.
All right.
So see if we can do this without writing it down. We'll find out. What needs to go in place? We'll write it down.
Y1.
What is this one?
X.
X1 and Y1, right?
Yeah.
And then what is this over here, the slope?
M.
M. So what's going to go first where this Y1 is?
+2.
The 2, right? So 2 equals
2/3.
M, which
Negative
is
2/3.
-2/3. That's correct. And then X minus
-6.
-6. And is it okay if we switch that to +6 right away? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive.
Oh, that's
Okay.
going to be confusing.
Just remember, if you've got two negatives right next to each other, switch it to a plus. Okay.
Can you just wait?
No problem.
Then I get lost.
I don't want anybody getting lost.
Oh.
Then we'll be wandering around the building and bats will attack us and things like that.
Okay. Carolina,
All right. Are we good?
are we good? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now, our goal, so we've got an equation, but we're supposed to write the equation in slope intercept form, which is this one over here. Right?
That is.
So here's how we do it. And you guys may know, I'm just going to ask you, what would you typically do first if you were going to try and get the y by itself?
Add 2.
You are going to add 2, but there's actually going to be one thing that we're going to want to do before we add the 2. We're going to want to distribute to get rid of these parentheses. Remember how a lot of times with our equations we would distribute to get rid of the
Oh, I
parentheses?
forgot the parentheses.
We're-
because I was
yeah,
like,
you
it doesn't make
Got to put the parentheses in, otherwise that's going to make a difference. So we're going to multiply here. I'm going to leave the y minus 2 for now. This will be negative 2/3 times x. That's easy. It's just negative 2/3 x. You just write it next to it. But here's the one that's a little bit tougher because it's a fraction times the 6. And you guys might want to grab your calculators. Negative 2/3 times 6 is
negative 4.
negative 4.
Plus 2. Plus 2.
Okay? Does that make sense? And now we're ready to get the y completely by itself, right? So how do we get the y by itself? Add the 2 plus 2. So that cancels out. And now we have just y. We have negative 2/3 x. And we have minus 2. So that is our answer. Somebody's trying to become famous and get on the video with their car horn, truck horn probably. So again, what does this tell us? What is our slope when we see it like this?
Negative 2/3.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the same slope, right? And then what is our y-intercept when we see it down here?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So not only does it go through this point, negative 6, 2, it goes through this point, 0, negative 2. As it goes down and over, it's going to eventually hit the y-axis at this point right here. So this one, as far as you have these two different types of equations, and the reason is this one is really easy to come up with an equation. If you know a point, you know a slope, you just plug them in, boom, you've got an equation. This one is really easy when you're trying to graph because you always start on that y-intercept and then you use your slope to find your next couple of points. Okay, so they kind of have different jobs.
Is there a way to check this to see if it's right?
You could graph them both, but that's really the only way of doing it.
So what would you do first? You would put it at negative 6.
Yeah, if I was going to graph this, so let's say I'm going to graph this, I would find my negative 6, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, which would be right here. That's this point. And then I'd use my slope, and I'm going to go down 2 and to the right 3, which would be right here. And then down 2 more and to the right 3, which would be right there.
Negative 2.
And there, if you notice, there is my intercept of
Negative 2.
negative 2.
Which is 0, negative 2.
0, negative 2. So you could check it by graphing it. And again, the way you do that is you just take the point you start with that. Just like before, we started with the intercept because we knew that, and then you use your slope, down 2 to the right 3, down 2 to the right 3. So when you graph them, they should be the same line. If they're not, something bad happened.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Okay. So now things get a little bit tougher because we have to remember, whoops, I should have left that there.
Oh, wait, it's tough.
Oh, well, I just erased it. We have to remember something we did last week.
Find the slope.
We have to use these 2 points
Y2
to help us find the slope. And if you remember our formula, it looked like this. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Do you remember seeing that last week?
Slope. Yes.
That's the slope formula. I'm going to write this back up here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And again, the ones that we have to be concerned about, this one, and this one. Okay?
Okay.
So, you remember how we said it doesn't matter how you label these x1 or x2? We just need to pick one. So which one would you guys like to be point number 1?
I usually just go in like that.
In order?
Um,
So
I know
X,
sometimes it's a little harder. 'cause-
X1, Y1, and then
Uh-huh.
X2, Y2. That's totally fine. You can do that. That's fine. So if we plug that in, Y2 is the -3 minus Y1 is the 5. And then X2 is the 4 minus X1, which is -2. Now, before we go on, I want to make sure, does everybody understand where those numbers came from? Okay, the 2 Y's, -3 and 5, and the 2 X's, 4 and -2. Now, again, right down here, we don't like these two negatives right next to each other, so what do we know that that turns into? +2, yep. So, putting this together, we've got -3 minus 5 on the top. That is
-8.
-8. 4 plus 2 on the bottom.
6.
That is 6. Now, this is fine, but we want to reduce it. What can we divide both of those by? 2. So if we divide the top by 2, we get -4. Dividing the bottom by 2, we get 3. So that is our slope. M equals -4/3. Okay? Now, according to what we have labeled X1 and Y1, what can you tell me our equation should look like? What should I write down?
Y
Y
minus
minus
5.
the 5, right? Y1 equals
-4/3.
M, which you're right, that is -4/3, parentheses,
Parentheses,
X minus
2.
-2.
-2.
X minus -2. Now, when we see X minus -2, what do we know will happen there?
It's a
It will
plus.
become +2. So that would be our equation. Now, do you remember how we said right back at the beginning, it doesn't matter which one we label X1 and X2 and Y1 and Y2? What if we had said this one was X1 and Y1? What would our equation look like then? It'd be Y minus
3.
the -3, which makes it Y plus 3. And then our slope is still -4/3. And then we'd have X minus 4. And these equations look really different, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, they look really different. And I'm not going to take the time to do it right now, but if we switch them both into slope intercept form, it'd be exactly the same. They are actually exactly the same line. It's just that you're starting with a different point. This one we're starting, the first one we started at -2, 5. The second one we're starting at 4, -3.
Okay.
But if the line is going through those 2 points anyway, it doesn't matter where we start, they're going to end up being the same line.
It's gonna end up getting the same.
Yeah.
The Y line. Okay.
So it doesn't matter which one of these you choose. They're both correct. Okay, so if you're just totally thrilled to use this one, that's fine, and you put it in. If you'd prefer to use this one, that's fine, you put it in. They both are the same line. Okay. But again, if you wanted to take the time to switch them both into slope intercept form like we did that last one, when you did that, they would both come out to be the exact same line. Okay.
Do we have to remember the formulas?
I will probably give you the formulas.
Thank
I'll give you the slope formula, and you may have to remind me, but I plan to give you the slope formula and slope intercept form and point slope. So the one we learned about slope a couple weeks ago or last week, and then these two that we've learned tonight, I'll give you those. Now, I won't have them labeled. Like, I'm not going to say M equals the slope and B equals the y-intercept. So you'll have to remember what those things mean.
Right.
But as far as the letters, I'll give you the pattern.
I
Okay.
remember my high school teacher didn't give us anything. Yeah.
Well, I usually will at the beginning, and then towards the end, I won't anymore. But
I bet he'll gonna say no because they used to tell us no. You gotta remember it.
I realize that you guys have maybe been out of math for more than,
Yes,
a
we
couple
have been.
months, like
You're so
my students.
kind. You're so
Yeah,
kind.
we appreciate
Oh,
it.
whoops, I just,
Thank you so much.
oh, I just erased something else that I didn't want to erase. Okay, whatever. So let me put these things back down. Our slope formula was m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and then y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and then y equals mx plus b. So, and again, to recircle my things here, that's what we're putting in there. And then again, these are the two that can change in that one. And the reason I put slope intercept form back up there again is because this time when we write out the equation, we're supposed to, after we get the equation, convert it into slope intercept form. Okay. So let's start out by finding the slope, right? We know 2 points, and I just left these up there because they lined up perfectly with the ordered pairs anyway, so might as well leave them there. So are we okay with leaving this as 0.1 and this is 0.2? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
We could switch them, but why worry about it? So m equals,
-2.
yep,
-4.
-2 minus 4. And on the bottom,
-1.
-1 minus
+3.
-3, which does turn into +3. So this is -6, and this is 2, which becomes -3. That's very convenient that our slope is not a fraction. Now, one thing that I will mention, I guess we didn't do any like this when we were graphing. 3, if we're trying to graph something, or -3, when you're trying to graph something, what's automatically in the denominator if you've got just a
1.
number? 1. So it's actually 3 over 1 or -3 over 1 or 7 over 1 or whatever. So when you're thinking rise over run and it's a 3, in this case, you'd be going down 3, but still to the right 1. Because as a fraction, if we reduce it, that's really 3 over 1, right? When we divide them both by 2.
Down 3.
Down 3 because it's negative, and then to the right 1. Okay. So I don't think we did any like that in our examples, and you may come up against that at some point where it's just an integer. But that's very convenient because when we write this out, what are we going to write out for our equation then? Y minus what?
Y minus 4
Y minus 4
equals -3.
-3 times x minus,
3.
which changes it to +3. And then what was the other option?
Y
minus-
or y plus 2
+2.
equals -3.
And then x plus 1. Now, since we have to change it into slope intercept form this time anyway, I went ahead and did both of them because I want to show you that they both turn into the same equation. And it doesn't matter which one you pick. Okay, so let me switch colors here. Switch to green. What did I have to do here to start switching this into slope intercept form?
So
Add-
by
Before we add,
oh,
we want to distribute, right?
distribute.
So distribute the -3. So that's going to give us still y minus 4 equals, this is going to be -3x. And then -3 times +3 is -9.
plus 4
And then what else did we have to do?
plus 4.
+4.
So y equals
So y equals
-3x.
-5.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our answer. This second part you wouldn't even have to do. I'm just doing it so that you trust me that these are actually the same line. I'm not lying to you, I promise. So what would we have to do first on this one? Yeah, distribute. It's always the same.
I forget.
It's always the same thing. Once you write it like this, you always distribute and get the y by itself. It's always the same steps because it always looks the same. So this would be y plus 2 equals -3x minus 3, right? Then what else do we do?
-2.
Subtract 2. So y equals -3x minus 5. Like magic, they're the same. Okay. The other reason I chose this one is because it didn't have a fraction in it, so it wasn't as difficult to do. The fraction would have still worked. It's just a little bit more complicated. Okay. So does that make sense? So there's our answer. Put it in slope intercept form. But again, you could do it with either one of the points, the first point that they give you or the second point. The only reason you need 2 points is because you need the 2 points in order to find the slope. And then once you know the slope, then you just need one of the points. It doesn't matter which one.
So we have to put like y equal minus 3x.
For this one, yeah, because that's what the directions. So make sure you are careful with the directions. If they want slope intercept form, then it needs to look like this. If they just want point slope form, and again, the directions will say that, or if they don't specify, you should be able to put either one in. Okay. Does that make sense? One more, it looks like. This time I'm going to be smart. I'm not going to erase all the stuff. All right. We're going for slope intercept form again. So what do we need to do first?
And equals 1 minus or plus 2.
Yeah, 1 minus -2, which makes it a plus. And then in our denominator,
-4
-4 minus
minus
6. Right? You're always subtracting.
Okay, that. Always?
It's
That's
always,
right.
it's
That's
always,
right, sorry.
yep, no, it's always subtracting.
Get the formula.
Yeah, just from the formula.
Okay.
It sometimes turns into adding because you're
Right.
subtracting a negative.
Right.
We're going to get a 3 and a -10. Okay.
-3/10.
Yeah, and I mean, when we think about it, we think of it as -3/10. But all right. So is everybody okay with the slope? All right, so let's go to our equation. In point slope form, what should our equation say? Y minus,
Minus
Negative
2.
2.
No,
okay,
-2.
y minus -2, which makes it +2. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
-3/10.
And then I'm going to put the negative out in the front, -3/10.
Minus
And then we're going to have x minus 6. Okay. So that's point slope form. We're only going to do one of them. We only need to do one of them. I just did that to show you that you could do either one of them. And then what do we need to do to convert this into slope intercept form? Distribute first. So here, y plus 2 stays. We're going to have -3/10 x. And then here, a negative times a negative makes it positive. And if somebody wants to check on their calculator there, it's going to be, I don't know what the easiest way. I think it's going to be 1 3/5. No, that's not right.
9/5.
Oh yeah, multiplying.
9.
9 by 5.
9/5. What am I doing here? 18 over 10. Oh yeah.
So it's probably 1.
Reduces to be 9 over 5. So 1 4/5. That's what we need.
Okay.
Sorry about that. You know, it's late at night. This is past my bedtime.
No,
My bedtime is 9 o'clock and it's already 9:30. Whew.
You still in that word?
Yes. Everyone on YouTube, I live in Mount Vernon. All right. So, so what do we have to do after this?
-2.
Subtract 2. And we subtract 2. So again, with your calculators, that's not too terribly difficult. -3/10, unless it's after 9 o'clock, then I can't do it. But this ends up being -1/5, I think. If you guys could check that for me. That one I'm feeling better about. Of course, I was feeling good about the other one too.
Yeah.
1 4/5 minus 2 is -1/5. So this is our equation in slope intercept form. Again, this is not one that I would probably have you graph by putting it into this form. If I was going to have you graph this, I would have you graph it in this form because then we just start at this point and use our slope, right? I wouldn't have you start at -1/5 because that would be a pain to try and estimate that, right, Sally? Estimating in between the corners is not easy. Try and make it exactly the same. Okay?
Okay.
But that's the process to put it into slope
Process.
point slope form. You always do the same thing. Find the slope, put it in, use one of the points, put it in. Then if you need to convert it to slope intercept, again, it's always the same thing. Distribute first, and then either add or subtract to get the y by itself. Okay, and I think, is that it?
That's it.
Everybody's packing up their stuff. It must be it. So notice there are only 6 problems there because I know some of those take longer because you have to put it in one equation, then change it to the other equation. Okay. But yeah, these 3 equations right here, slope formula, point slope form, and slope intercept form, when we get to test time, I will give you those.
So no test next week.
No test next week. What'll happen is next week, I'm planning on doing, finishing up chapter 2 and actually chapter 3, because chapter 3 is really short.
What is it about?
It's about, remember how we did inequalities earlier? Oh, no, we haven't done inequalities yet, so never mind. We're going to do inequalities, like greater than, less than.
Oh, okay.
Did we do that? Did we do,
No.
I'm only teaching 5 classes right now at different times, so I forget what I've done in which
I
class.
don't know how you do that.
I mean, remembering the stuff is not bad. Remembering who I've talked to
Yeah.
about what, that's the part that's
Yeah.
tricky. That's why I have to have my slides here so that I remember, oh, this is what I should talk about next. This is what I should talk about next. Okay, so are we okay with this? Is that okay to erase? And then you've got those 6 problems there. I think the other one was 10.